Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fascinating around high stakes agreements.
We are.
Specifically, how to secure commitment by deliberately not trying to close. We're tackling this concept a listener shared with us called the anti-close strategy.
Yeah, and this one, it really flips the script on a lot of the traditional sales literature out there.
It does.
We looked at sources that make this really bold, kind of counterintuitive argument that the harder you work on your own to create that perfect, glossy proposal, the more likely the client is to just back away at the very end.
And that paradox is exactly what we're here to unpack. So our mission is to understand the psychological root of commitment, why all that solo effort actually destroys it.
Right.
And most importantly, we're going to lay out a clear, actionable framework for co-creating solutions with your client. It's about getting to self-driven commitment, not just a signature.
At the end of the day, the question we're trying to answer is pretty simple. The signature belongs to the client.
Right.
So why do we keep making the entire project, the entire solution, belong completely to us? That disconnect is where deals just die.
Let's start with that familiar, really painful scenario. We hear from sellers all the time, especially in high-value services, who feel like they've won the deal.
The verbal agreement.
Exactly. They got the verbal agreement. But then they go into the proposal phase, and as one source put it, they fall right before the finish line. If the client likes the solution, why does all that momentum just vanish?
It vanishes because there's a total lack of ownership on the client's side. I mean, that initial enthusiasm, that was for the idea of solving the problem.
Okay.
But if they didn't participate in creating the solution itself, the commitment just isn't there. It disappears. They go from being an active partner to just a passive viewer, evaluating something someone else handed to them.
And that's where the inversion of effort really hits you. If I, the seller, lock myself away for 80 hours writing a flawless, beautiful proposal that covers everything, who feels the most invested in that final PDF?
You do, of course.
Right. I've poured my time, my expertise into it. I'm proud of it. I feel ownership. But the client, they just open an attachment. They're just a reviewer.
Exactly.
So if I'm the only one who's truly invested before the contract is signed, why should they feel the weight of putting their signature on it?
It's the paradox of commitment, really. You want them to commit, but
Right.
you're actively taking away their chance to build that commitment during the most important phase.
But hold on, isn't that what we're paid for? I mean, isn't presenting a polished, complete product the very definition of being professional? Why would I risk looking disorganized by asking the client to help me write my own deliverable?
That is a critical question, and it's where we get tangled up in our own good intentions. We think we're respecting the client's time by not, bothering them.
Right, I'll handle this, you're busy.
Exactly. But the source material flags this as a potential form of silent arrogance.
Silent arrogance, I like that.
It's the assumption that we understand their specific needs, their internal politics, better than they do themselves.
So we mistake our prep work for respect, but to them it just signals that we don't really trust them to define their own path. And that becomes a huge psychological barrier.
Precisely. And this gets us to the core issue. Why do people value something they contribute to so much more than something they're just handed? Why is the thing that was easy to buy often so easy to abandon later on?
Because there's no skin in the game.
Yeah.
You mentioned a really powerful cautionary tale from the sources that shows the cost of this solo work. Tell us about that expert and the $1 million mistake.
Okay, so the story goes, an expert was trying to impress this huge potential client. He gets his whole internal team together to land this massive consulting contract. They spend over 100 hours crafting this exhaustive, highly detailed proposal. The project cost was just over $1 million. They thought they had covered every single base.
Maximum effort, the whole 9 yards.
The whole deal.
Yeah.
And then nothing. Silence. After weeks of just radio silence, the expert finally manages to get the client on the phone. And the client was actually surprised he was following up. That's when he learned the truth. They'd looked at the $1 million price tag, realized the proposal showed a deep misunderstanding of what they actually needed.
Oh, no.
And they had instead just self-implemented a basic solution that cost them about $30,000.
Ouch. I think every single person listening just winced remembering a glossy PDF they sent that just vanished into the void.
It's a painful lesson, isn't it? Building a proposal without active, iterative client feedback isn't just costly in time and effort. It actively damages the relationship. It proves you weren't really listening.
So the failure to close is almost always in that big dead zone, that gap between the first great conversation and the final beautiful but totally alien proposal.
And that leads us straight to the IKEA effect.
Right.
Psychologically, people assign a way higher value to things they've assembled themselves. I
Hmm.
mean, think about that wobbly bookshelf you built on a Saturday. You protect it not because it's great furniture, but because you built it. Your effort creates value.
So in the world of high-stakes B2B services, the IKEA moment isn't signing the contract. It's the whole process of co-creating the proposal itself. But how does that work when you're not building a bookshelf?
Well, the investment becomes intellectual and emotional. If you deliver a 100% complete agreement, defined only by you, the only way for the client to interact with it, to add their own value, is to become a critic,
To find the flaws.
to find the flaws, challenge assumptions, push back hard on the price.
That's fascinating. So they feel like they have to earn their signature by tearing your work apart.
Exactly. But if they co-build it with you, they're psychologically invested from the very beginning. They're protecting their choice, their work. Closing isn't a sales tactic. It's about building commitment. And commitment, well, it comes from participation, not from perfection.
Okay, this all sounds great in theory, but now the big question, pacing. If we start collaborating more, isn't there a real danger this whole process just drags on forever? How do we avoid that?
It's a paradox, right? But it's simple. To be faster at the stressful signing phase, you have to slow down and be more rigorous during the agreement phase.
So you're talking about achieving small, multiple micro closes.
Precisely. You build commitment incrementally. They agree to one objective, then one timeline, then one resource. You're building the foundation brick by brick.
And I imagine that also works as a quick reality check.
Absolutely. If a client won't commit 15 minutes to talk through an objective early on, you've only lost 15 minutes, not 200 hours, building a proposal they were never going to sign.
So silence at that micro level is actually a gift.
It's the clearest answer you'll ever get. It allows for a clean break.
Okay, that efficiency is huge. Let's talk about the big one, the obstacle every seller dreads, the price objection. If the client is co-creating the whole thing, does that get rid of the pushback on cost?
It drastically reduces it because you've already established value incrementally. But you have to remember, price objections are almost never the actual problem. They're a symptom, not the root cause.
So what's hiding underneath?
Fear. It's almost always a deeper fear. Fear of scrutiny from their boss. If I sign this and it fails, I'm toast. Fear of making the wrong choice. Fear of losing face. The price is just the easiest thing to argue about.
So the job isn't to defend the price with more data, it's to, what? Play detective and find the fear. Can you give an example of what that sounds like?
Sure. So instead of immediately defending the number, you ask questions. Something like, I hear you on the budget, but let's step back a second. Is the concern the total amount, or is it more about the internal risk if we don't hit that first big milestone? What would make you feel more secure presenting this cost internally?
Well, okay.
Once you address the fear, maybe by building in clear off-ramps or smaller milestones for their boss, the commitment solidifies. The price then feels right for the risk reduction you're providing.
That's a brilliant shift. You're moving it from a price dispute to a shared risk mitigation plan. Okay, let's tie this all together for everyone listening. We need an actionable blueprint. You call it AIWI.
Yes, AIWI. 4 steps anyone can apply right away.
All right, what's the first A?
The A is for awareness. This is the self-check. You have to recognize if you are doing the work for the client or with the client. Just ask yourself, am I writing this to prove how brilliant I am, or to clearly show the client what they need in a way they help define?
And next is the first I for insight. This is the core principle behind the whole thing.
The insight is this. People commit to what they help create. It's a fundamental rule of human psychology. And conversely, they pull away from what's just handed to them because it feels alien or imposed.
Okay, which brings us to W for wisdom. And
Right.
this is about the sequence of events.
Exactly. The wisdom is that you cannot jump straight to the price or the finished proposal. The order matters immensely, and there are 4 co-building steps you have to follow collaboratively.
Let's walk through those. Step 1.
Step 1, objectives. You present them maybe 60 to 80% complete. They're solid, but they're intentionally incomplete. Then you actively invite the client to correct them, refine them, and finalize them.
But how do you do that without looking like you haven't done your homework?
That's the subtle part. Your homework is done. The remaining gap is the space for their specific wisdom. So you might define the objective as, say, increase lead conversion. They finalize it by saying, by 15% in the next 2 quarters, based on our legacy CRM data. They fill in the specific measurable details.
Got it. It makes the objective theirs instantly. Okay, step 2 is process.
Step 2 is the process. Who does what and when? It's really helpful to work backward from the end result to set the milestones. But the crucial part is allocating resources. Who on the client side needs to be available? Who coordinates? This step defines the real work.
Then step 3, the working group. Sounds like an org chart, but I guess it's more than that.
Much more. You define the team on both sides. Who coordinates, who owns the data, and this is critical, who holds the authority to make the final financial decision.
The final signer.
Yes. If that person isn't involved in defining the objectives and the process, the deal is dead on arrival. You have to get access to them early.
Makes sense. And finally, step 4 is terms and price. Why last?
The terms and price only get defined after everything else is agreed upon. You separate the discussion of terms like payment schedules or off-ramps from the final number. And by now, the price just reflects the value and the scope that they helped create. There are no surprises.
And this entire collaborative process leads us to the final I in the blueprint.
Illumination. That's the result.
Yeah.
You created a cooperation field. It's not about closing anymore. It's about creating a space where the client feels respected, the path is clear, and they know, without a doubt, they are a co-author of the solution.
So when you do this right, that closing stage is no longer this high-pressure, stressful moment.
It stops being selling at all. It just becomes the natural, obvious next step after a series of small shared agreements. The client is basically guiding themselves to the finish line, and at that point, they're the ones saying, okay, send the contract over.
That's such a huge shift in perspective, moving from sales aggression to collaborative guidance. If you remember only one thing from this deep dive, it should be this. Don't try to close the client. Co-create something with them that they feel so invested in, they want to protect it with their signature.
And this process really proves that slowing down at the right moments is actually the fastest and most secure way to get a complex deal done.
So as you're thinking this over, maybe reflect on the last major agreement you signed, professional or personal. Were you more committed to the parts you debated and helped define, or the parts you just accepted?
And what's one small step you could take in your very next negotiation to turn that client from an audience member just watching you perform into a deeply invested collaborator? The next deal you secure might just be the one you and your client co-authored together.